Donald Trump is unprecedented in American history. No other sitting president has said he might refuse to leave if he loses. But these terrifying statements merely expose a 70-year-old system that has empowered the office of the presidency way beyond what most people realize.
That a clip from a new series premiering at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight on Vice. It's called While the Rest of Us Die. The series, it features interviews with big-name national security figures as they discuss dangers to the country and also how this current president is handling his waning days in office. Paul Rieckoff, he's founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans for America. He's also president and editor-in-chief of Righteous Media, which is a creative consultant on the program. And I guess one thing, Paul, you don't have to worry about ever doing an episode and then, everything becoming normal the next day so it feels dated. Look, just before you came on, we're learning about a drawdown now that many people saw as possible after Esper was pushed out, as well as others purged from DOD. Talk about some of the concerns that you're hearing, you a veteran yourself here, about not just drawn down too soon before it makes a ton of sense on the ground, but also concerns about targeting Iran in the waning days, about how we really don't know how far this president could go with the 60-plus days he has left.
Well, Rich, I think the reality is we just passed Veterans Day a couple of days ago. This is the most precarious, dangerous Veterans Day of my lifetime. And I think that the next 2 months are extremely fragile for our national security, for our homeland security, and for our troops. We've got an unstable, reckless president who now has no accountability in a need to stay for a second term. He may try to fight it and stay. But the thing we want to underscore in this series and in all of our work is it can get worse. If you think it can't, remember that this guy has control of our military. He just fired the Secretary of Defense, the only other person who's a civilian who can actually give orders to our military, and he has access to nukes. So he can do things that are really unprecedented, that are really scary, that are unchecked by our current checks and balances. And that's what this series is about. And frankly, it's what should keep all Americans up at night right now. He will likely try to pull troops down from Afghanistan. He could start fights in other places. He can play games around the wall again at the border in Mexico. This is a president that is unstable, that is reckless, that is focused on his personal political agenda. And right now, our troops and our national defense may be collateral damage.
Oh, in fact, I want to play a clip speaking to that. Richard Clark, who a lot of people know, obviously, from around the time of the Iraq invasion post 9/11, he's also part of your series.
So there is this period of 3 months during which a president who has been defeated or whose second term has expired or is about to expire, nonetheless is in charge of the military. Let's imagine a scenario where a president loses his bid for re-election and then loses his mind, in part because of the defeat, in part because of some previously existing mental problem. He loses control. If a president rolled out of bed on one day and wanted to end the world and called in the code, and there was no war going on, our hope would be that the military officers receiving the go codes might ask for higher authority or simply say, no, Mr. President, that is not a legal order. But technically, they don't have to. If the president says go, they're supposed to go.
Well, that should scare the you-know-what out of everyone. But Paul, to that end, the one thing a lot of people have said to me is they saw the pushback from Mattis. They saw some of the corroboration from Kelly also. We saw what Esper said, not just going out the door, but even apologizing for what happened at Lafayette Square. And even the Joint Chiefs staff, General Milley also saying as much, that the military wasn't going to go along to get along with the president if they thought he was going beyond the four corners of what a president should do. Are you also confident that there's a line that the military won't cross even if the president asks?
I am. I mean, we do have the finest military in the world, and they're not Donald Trump's military, they're our military. And they're loyal to the Constitution above all else, and they will uphold that loyalty and they will defend it with their lives. However, they are subject to civilian control. And the president has proven time and time again he will not listen to good counsel. He will not hesitate to put troops in harm's way, whether it's sending them in as National Guardsmen to crush peaceful protesters or potentially to other places around the world. He is what I've called a political suicide bomber. He will blow up anything and anyone that's in his path to achieve his political ends. And the latest victim is Secretary of Defense Esper, who is gone now. And now you've also seen an exodus of senior military leaders throughout the Pentagon over the last couple of days. This should concern everyone. The Pentagon is the most powerful agency in the federal government. If you were going to start to consolidate power, if you were going to try to pull things close to you in a time of desperation, you would start with the Pentagon and you would start with the Secretary of Defense. So this is a very precarious time. It's a very dangerous time. We've got the fourth acting secretary now at the Pentagon in 4 years. 4 secretaries. Now imagine having 4 bosses at your job in 4 years. Now imagine your job is war. That's what our troops are dealing with. That's what our senior leaders are dealing with. General Milley right now seems to be holding the line. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He's an honorable man, but Trump can fire him too. And if Trump fires him too, he's going far past the guardrails that our military is designed to create to keep him in check.
I saw an exit poll where, and also the Military Times, you know this better than I do, Paul, they were asking rank and file and officers to what they were feeling going into the election. And, usually military skews conservative, but the numbers were a toss-up. Even some polls had Biden leading. We won't know the real data coming out. But after the losers and suckers, after what he did to McCain, after, the idea of taking up for a war criminal and ruining careers of SEALs who actually came forward and said this isn't what we stood for with the Gallagher case. And also the bounty story where Russians paying the Taliban to kill our guys and you don't even confront Putin about it. And I can go on, but my point is, you're closer to this than just about anybody I know. Has there been a breaking point with the military to say he may talk a good game, but he's not talking in our interests?
Yes. And I think maybe the untold story of the election is that veterans may have been the difference. In Arizona, Biden won by roughly 11,000 votes. There are 500,000 veterans in Arizona, a lot of active duty folks, a lot of retired folks, and they did not appreciate Trump attacking John McCain for 4 years. And they listened to Cindy McCain and they listened to Meghan McCain. And you saw that they voted. They voted a very high percentage. They tend to be independent and unaffiliated. That's a huge part of my podcast, is representing the folks who feel like both political parties have abandoned us. And increasingly, that's a number of veterans and active duty, first responders, cops, firefighters, nurses and doctors, people who feel like both parties have left us behind. But I think the real untold story is how those veterans got sick of the attacks. They care about country first. They're concerned about our national security, and they voted. It may have meant the difference in Arizona and in Pennsylvania and in places like Texas and even in New York. People came out and voted because they care about our national security, they care about our values, and they care about integrity. And they had an alternative in Joe Biden, who is known in the national security space, who's known in the foreign policy space, and who was a Blue Star father himself. His own son, Beau, deployed to Iraq. So he was an alternative that was familiar to the national defense and military community. And when it came down to it and folks checked that box or pulled that lever, I think a lot of them went with Biden, and it could have meant the difference.
And finally, Paul, for folks who may know IAVA, which Paul was the founder of, you've worked a lot at trying not to forget the soldiers when they come back. And I saw some numbers. Obviously we're focused in a pandemic, but the PTSD, the suicide, the homelessness, basically every metric for so many guys and women when they come back here, it is really bad. If a President Biden was going to say, all right, Paul, what can we do? What should we do for this population that hasn't been done? What would you say?
The number one thing we need to do actually is defeat the virus, because the other untold story is how many veterans are dying and are sick from COVID. You think about 250,000 or so folks who've died. Think about all the older vets, the World War II vets who are in nursing homes who have died. And we've seen a skyrocketing over the last 9 days in the Department of Veterans Affairs. They've seen the highest rates of COVID infection since the pandemic started. So the numbers are going in the wrong direction. They've only tested less than 1 million veterans in this country, and there are almost 19 million of them across the United States. So I really think that the number one priority for us is defeating the virus. If you want to support vets, help them not die. Wear a mask, social distance, do all the other things that are necessary, because especially our World War II veterans are uniquely vulnerable. They're in their 90s. Many of them have respiratory issues. Our Vietnam vets also are subject to COVID at a higher rate because of Agent Orange exposures. So yes, we have to talk about suicide. We have to talk about homeless. But the number one thing that's hurting and killing veterans right now is COVID. So if you want to support veterans, defeat the virus, wear a mask, and help us protect these older veterans who've given everything. They fought the Nazis. They stormed the beaches at Normandy. They shouldn't die from COVID.
And again, a program reminder, everybody, 10 o'clock tonight, premiering on Vice as well, The Rest of Us Die. And Paul, a creative consultant on that program as well. Paul, always good talking to you. I appreciate it.
Thank you always, Rich. Appreciate it.